Well, Nick, welcome to Melbourne.
Thank you. It's very pretty here. I really like it.
How are you enjoying it so far?
I love it. It's gorgeous.
Had you been to Melbourne before?
Mm-mm.
No.
I've never been here.
First time.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, Nick, I was there last night. Congratulations on the film. I
Thank you.
absolutely loved it.
Oh, thanks.
So, tell us a little bit about where the idea first came about. You and Billy have worked together a lot over the years. Where did the idea for Bros first come from?
Well, for years I was intrigued by the idea of romantic comedy about two men falling in love.
Yeah.
But I'm straight, so I didn't think I could do that story by myself.
Yeah.
It would be bad.
Yeah.
if I did it by myself.
Yeah.
And then I cast Billy. I knew him from Billy on the Street. He's so funny. I cast him in Neighbors 2. Then I cast him in this show called Friends from College that I created with my wife. And he was a really good actor in the show.
Yeah.
I didn't know what a good actor he was. And then we screened the first episode of that in a movie theater. And every time he was on screen, he destroyed.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, this guy's a movie star. And so I approached him about doing a romantic comedy as a comedy vehicle for him.
Yeah.
And he was into the idea, and we started working on it from there.
Did you know what sparked that interest for you to do a gay romantic comedy in the first place? Was it something that you saw or read or someone that you spoke to that kind of sparked that interest in the first place?
I just thought, why hasn't this story been told on this big a canvas? And obviously there's been a lot of gay art, a lot of gay stories. I'm not saying that this is like the first one or anything, but in terms of an R-rated, hard R, big studio comedy, it just hasn't really happened before. And the secret to comedy is telling fresh stories, It really is. And so I thought, well, this is an opportunity to tell a fresh story. And if I hadn't met Billy, I wouldn't have made the movie. Like there wasn't, unless I met some other brilliant gay comedian,
Yeah.
But it was also, in addition to an interest in the subject matter, I became very quickly obsessed with his comic persona and his comedy, because I think he's a comic genius, really.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just found his screen presence endlessly fascinating, and to me, he deserved a comedy vehicle. So it was almost as much about that as it was about the subject matter.
What were those original writing sessions like with him, where you sat down to flesh out the idea? They would have been a pretty interesting time as well.
Yeah, I mean, he came, he has a lot of opinions and a very strong and smart point of view on love and on queer love and LGBTQ love and the community and stuff. And so we started talking, and it was kind of a crash course and all that stuff for me.
Yeah.
He kind of laid it out for me, and there was stuff that was certainly surprising, but it all made logical sense, And my way in was, it's about men and masculinity and toxic masculinity a little bit and all of that, and so I felt like for me that was my way in, and I totally understood that part of it.
Yeah. You said last night during the Q&A that you also learnt a lot while you were making this film. What were some of the things that you learnt personally doing the film?
I mean, this sounds I always feel like a little, I don't want to generalize because there's a million stories and there's a million people, But to me, the very first thing he said to me, one of our first meetings, he said to me, which I'd never thought of, and as soon as he said it, I was like, oh, of course it's so. But he was like, if you're gay, you like men and you like masculine stuff. And he was like, and there's this strange idea that you like feminine stuff. And he was like, that's not what it is.
Yeah.
You like men,
Yeah.
As soon as he said that, I was like, oh, of course. It was a very it sounds so dumb, but it was a very eye-opening thing. And that kind of informed the entire movie, it also it was like one of those things where my whole worldview shifted a little bit, and that's why I feel so privileged to get to make movies, because you get to, and not just with him, but I've gotten to work with so many different actors who kind of explain to me their worldview and explain to me their experiences, and it's very cool, and I feel very privileged really to get to do this for that reason.
With my theatre writing over the years, I've found there's been times I've been working on a project and I'm like, nah, this is just too controversial. No one's going to want to put this on. Was that something that you felt when you were writing, that this was a script that might never make it to the big screen because it might be a little bit controversial, or was that something that you never really worried about?
I'm always naively optimistic, and I knew that if we wrote it really fun, it has to be entertaining. So we weren't going to try to make a sad drama or something so esoteric people wouldn't get it. I knew, and another reason I wanted to work with Billy is he's so funny. He's hard funny. He's a joke delivery system, and he wanted to make the same kind of movie I wanted to make. Tonally, while our lives are different, I always say we're both tall, middle-aged Jews, so we have this. We have a lot of the same, we have a lot of the same. I kind of agree with him about movies more than anyone. If he sees a movie or TV show, we almost always agree on whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
And so I just wasn't that worried about it. And when we screen the movie, it like destroys every time among everyone. It doesn't really matter. It could be gay people, straight people, old people, young people. It's you get them in there, everyone likes it.
I was going to say that the laughter last night, I haven't heard that kind of laughter at a premiere for a long time. That was one of the questions I wanted to ask, because we have so many screenwriters that read our magazine. What advice would you give for somebody wanting to write a screenplay? How do you know when something is funny and it's going to work for an audience, or is it just hit and miss?
I mean, I have some instinct that something's going to work. Your story has to be really honest, and your story has to be essentially all the movies I made are dramas. They don't have funny plots. Like they're Forgetting Sarah Marshall is about a depressed guy who's a borderline alcoholic. Get Him to the Greek is about addiction. I just talked to Russell Brand about his addiction issues endlessly to make that movie. And this is about a guy who's isolated himself and is kind of a loner. And so you really have to dig into the honest emotion. And the biggest laughs every time are from when it's not even from a joke. It's always from like something that feels really honest to the audience.
Now, outside of Billy, the rest of the cast are amazing as well. How did you go about casting? Because I know that was a big thing that you talked about last night. You guys had parameters that you wanted to work with the casting. How did you go about casting the rest of the roles?
Yeah, so we cast very early on. Luke came in. He might have been like the 10th actor we saw. We knew we wanted to cast an openly gay actor just because the conversation in the film about straight actors playing gay, it would have been strange if we cast a straight actor. Literally that joke wouldn't have worked. And then we were like, we should make the entire cast LGBTQ. That would make it's good for the world, certainly. It's good, but it's good for the movie. And I also knew that if we did that, we would discover a lot of talent that hadn't been in stuff before. That's the secret weapon of any romantic or of any comedy. Is someone who you haven't seen before be really, really funny. And we dug deep and we found a lot of people. Some people who've been around for a while, like Jim Rash and Dot Marie Jones, and other people like Eve Lindley and T.S. Madison, who haven't, who are and also funny. Yeah.
Was that exciting for you, going out there and discovering people that perhaps not everybody knows? Because in the past, you've worked with such big talents that everyone's known. Was that exciting for you to go out and discover new people as well as a director?
Yeah. I mean, I always do that. Like, that's kind of what my thing is, And so, I mean, or I show a side as someone that you didn't know what's funny. So like, if you think about like Diddy and Get Him to the Greek or Zac Efron and Neighbors, like people didn't know how funny those actors could be. Yeah. But then like the Frat Brothers and Neighbors, it's like Gerard Carmichael and like Dave Franco, and there's a bunch of people in there who hadn't done a ton of comedy at that point, who are all, or the like record label. It's like, I mean, that's just like Aziz Ansari and Nick Kroll and Jake Johnson and a bunch of people who now are famous and done it. So I always love to discover people. I think it's, it goes back to like Bridesmaids. Like Melissa McCarthy was this huge discovery off. People like loved seeing, discovering them. Or Zach Galifianakis in The Hangover. Like, oh my God, who is this person? Like, that's what's fun about comedy.
Yeah. My wife always tells me off about Bridesmaids. It's one of my favorite movies. And I said, oh wow, Melissa McCarthy's so funny. And she goes, well, if you'd watched Gilmore Girls with me, you would have already known that.
Yeah.
So with Billy and Luke, how much of their own lives did you put into their roles as well? I know last night they talked about Luke's love of country and Western went in. Was there other things that went in as well?
I mean, Billy, the Bobby character, because Billy's writing it for himself, there's certainly some similarities between him and Bobby. I mean, Bobby's a little pushed kind of guy. And I mean, Luke is farther from his character, I think, just because, he's a Juilliard trained actor. He plays the cello. He's he does woodworking. He is a kind of more like a Hallmark guy.
Yeah.
Like he literally builds stuff with his hands. But yeah, I mean, little details like that, like the Garth Brooks thing,
Yeah.
And there's also like a way in which like Billy's very like, just their very vibe is really funny together. Because Billy just as a person talks a lot and is very like hyper. He's super smart and constantly chatting, and Luke is very still, and he's very calm, and he kind of is like that as a person. So that sort of dynamic is hysterical,
Yeah. Now we're right out of time, so to finish up, what would you like to say to everybody out there who's thinking about heading along to check out Bros this weekend in the cinema?
I guarantee you will have a blast.
Awesome.